if you want to succeed in freelance, make a plan, because your chances increase dramatically.
Yep.
It's a long-term game when you're getting new work, especially in freelance. So it's like, if you quit your job today and you're like, I'm ready to freelance, someone might want to hire you, but the project might not be there until 8 months later. And if you don't have the means to float that time, you don't have the means to be successful and even get the opportunity.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Golden Hour Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Mays, here in the PolarPro studio, and today's guest is Nicks Fort. Nick is a freelance filmmaker and director, and he's worked with some incredible brands on commercial projects. Nick also has an active YouTube channel where he teaches people how to grow a successful business in the creative industry. Today in our interview, we talk all about how to start as a freelancer. We go over why it's important to start a YouTube channel, even if you don't want to become a quote YouTuber, and how to strategically plan for going full time. I really enjoyed my interview with Nick, so without any further ado, let's listen in on the interview with Mr. Nicks Fort. All right, we're here with Nicks Fort, and you brought a prop for us.
I did, yeah.
If you're not watching the video, go check it out on our website, but we got the Fortland flag.
Yeah, the Fortland flag.
Tell me about this prop.
Well, Fortland Productions is my business, right? So Fortland Productions, like if you're working with me, that's my company. And then Nicks Fort is sort of like a spin-off from that. So this Fortland flag I had made actually before I did a trip around the world with my wife. And right before we left, I was like, I got to get something to bring with us. And so I had the Fortland flag made. That's
awesome. Well, thanks for coming in. You're in town for some work stuff. And for people who aren't familiar with your work, you are a filmmaker, and also you're doing YouTube and Instagram as well. But I would classify you as a director and a filmmaker mostly. Would you agree with that? Or
yeah, totally.
But you're getting into YouTube and you're growing there, strong, and it's that's how we've interacted, on that basis. So
yeah, absolutely. I think that I started my YouTube channel about 2 years ago, and when I started it, I sort of was like, oh, I'm gonna be a YouTuber. And if anything, after 2 years, it has crystallized the idea that I don't want to be a YouTuber. I think that that's because
that's fine.
I had been working as a creative freelance professional in filmmaking up to that point. And it just made me want to continue to do that even better, and sort of like helped focus what I wanted to do outside of YouTube. Not to say that I don't want to do YouTube.
Sure.
I like to think of it as I'm a filmmaker professionally that has a YouTube channel.
Nice.
Not, instead of like, I don't aspire to just do YouTube. It's not in, it's not something I'm interested in.
It's funny because it's totally, well, just to list a couple of clients that you've worked with, this is based off of your website, nicksfort.com. You've worked for Adult Swim, HULU, Kaboom, Planet Fitness, different universities, Reebok, Volvo. I mean, the list goes on and on. You've worked for some incredible clients. There's a great film that you've posted on your website called Truth, that's about the Truth Initiative. Is this about tobacco and
stuff? Well, so like Truth is I don't know how old you are, but when
29.
Okay, so like you're sort of in that era where like I was in high school, I think, and Truth campaign came out, and it was like talking about tobacco. And
are they the ones that had people that like would talk like a robot, and they would do commercials about no smoking?
I'm not sure if I think they did maybe do that at some point. But the campaign that stood out when I was young it was called the Body Bags campaign. And they went, and it was super guerrilla style, documentary style filmmaking. And they went to a big building in New York City that was like a tobacco product headquarters or something. And they brought 1,200 body bags, and they stacked them up outside, and there's like helicopter shots and like it's super gritty and guerrilla marketing, and they turned it into a TV spot, and they put them out there, and they said 1,200 people die every day from smoking tobacco products, and that was the stat at the time. And I saw that when I was young, and I was like, what? And it was just so cool, like the way that it was directed and the way that it was shot, and like I just loved it. and some people in my family were affected by tobacco, so I
Wow.
ended up seeing a job to be a marketer for them.
Really?
On Craigslist, and I applied, and it was either that, do you know who P. Diddy is?
Yeah, of course.
I was living in New York. I was living in New York working for VH1 at the time was a cool thing to do. And I was either going to be a PA on P. Diddy's show or go on the Vans Warped Tour and be a marketer for Truth.
Oh, wow.
And so I went on the Warped Tour and I left New York City and I didn't go back.
Wow.
So I started working with them in that capacity, and they've been my longest client. I think I've been working with them for...
That was a good thing for me to list as the first thing to talk about, because that's a great segue into talking about your journey as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me about the beginning process of when you took this seriously and started working. I mean, you were working at VH1. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
I want to start at the beginning because I think that... So I have this tattoo here. And...
It's a camera. It's a Super 8 camera? No, it's a VHS camera. Yeah.
Can you I didn't want the full brand, but can you identify the...
I'm not familiar with all the VHS.
So it's a Zenith.
Okay.
Zenith. So
it looked like a Z. So I don't...
Yeah. So this is the VHS Zenith camera that my dad had when I was a kid.
Can you hold that up to one of the cameras there?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Like that.
There you go. You guys can see it now.
It's a bit weird. Sorry.
Yeah, if you're not watching the video again, go check out PolarProFilters.com/golden hour. Watch the video.
That was my dad's camera, and he, I was like a little kid. I was like 12, and he was like, I was like, I want to make a short film. So he gave me that camera, all in camera edits. There's no editing.
Yeah.
It's just hit record, and then, you do this. And so I came up with a story, and it was like, I want to tell the story of a burglar breaking into our house, and our dog's going to save the day. And so we're making this movie, my dad and I, on the camera, and he had put it on a tripod, and he was like, you want to see something cool? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, we're going to make the burglar disappear when the dog, who is the superhero in this story, comes into frame. He's going to make him disappear by looking at him. And I'm like a 12-year-old. My mind is like, yeah, okay, sure. And so like set it up, hits record, stops recording. Burglar moves out of the frame, hits record, you have a jump cut, and my little brain exploded. Yeah. And at that moment, I was like, I'm going to do this the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Like, this is for me. I was like, you just blew my mind. This is magic. This is insane. And so like, I think that was the very first moment for me that I was like, I'm probably going to make videos for the rest of my life. And then I started making skate videos and really bad short films through high school. I went to school for broadcasting and filmmaking. And then I got actually the first thing I did, which is another crazy thing. I didn't want a real job when I graduated. So I was like, I'm going to ride a moped from San Francisco all the way across the United States. And I did. And I got sponsors, and I actually got Scion, the automotive manufacturer, to sponsor us. And they gave us a support vehicle, had a photographer come and documented it. We raised money for a couple cancer organizations. My dad had cancer. And that was sort of my first project. Wow. And I found, and it's like, my dad's like, go get a job. And I'm like, no, I'm going to ride mopeds cross country. And he's like, it's a terrible idea. And then I was like, I raised all this money and I pulled it off and raised like $5,000 for cancer. And he's like, all right, do whatever you want.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And then I went to VH1, and I worked at VH1 in New York City for a year. And that made me understand that I didn't want to do that. I didn't want
corporate kind of life, or what?
Yeah, it was like I was an office PA, and I did assistant editing on the weekends. So I got to learn how to use Avid, and we were using tapes, and I was like loading stuff and stringing stuff out on an Avid with tapes, and like that was really interesting. And I sort of like I got to collect everyone's paychecks too. And so I was like, okay, these guys make this, and I could see how much everyone made. Yeah. And I was like, I should learn how to edit, because editors made the most. Really? Yeah. Out of the people
at VH1.
Yeah, in this environment. And then so I really started to learn how to edit, and I ended up doing that. And then I started working with The Truth, left New York, and like I got hired as a marketer, and I started shooting stuff with them on the side for fun. And then the manager and the marketing people at the company saw it. They started putting on their social media. And then after 2 years, their agency, Arnold Worldwide at the time, their big agency in Boston, reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to go just film stuff?
Yeah.
And that was like my first like freelance project.
Nice.
And they were like, do you want it? And they were like, we'll pay you this much a day. And I was like, what the? Yeah, dude, definitely. And it was awesome. It blew my mind. I was like, I can make that much money in a day. And I was like, I got to.
So that was the beginning of your freelance kind of filmmaking journey.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint it because I've never had a full-time job. Sure. I've been freelance the whole time. Me too. So
except for VH1.
No, that was still freelance. It was project based. So it was like you work on a show, the show lasts X amount of time, and then you try to get another show.
Gotcha. I thought you were on staff or something.
No, I mean it was only the high ups were staffed. Everyone else's contracts.
Interesting.
They were long contracts, like a 6-month deal. You know.
Yeah, I wonder if they do that for tax reasons or something.
I'm sure they do. Because when you're freelance, you got to pay for everything.
I know.
You know
exactly. But I still prefer it because of the freedom.
Oh, absolutely. I love freelancing, and that's something that I champion.
Yeah.
Especially like that's sort of like my YouTube channel has gone in that direction where I just like I really want to try to help people learn how to be successful freelancers. And I've mentored a few people, and it's cool. It's great. Like if you can do it, I've been doing it for 12 years and there's nothing better. Like I wouldn't be sitting here right now. It's Friday at 11 o'clock and like I'm here because I freelance.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I had a kid, 4 weeks ago, and I've basically taken 4 weeks off, because I'm freelance.
Right, and that's amazing. Like, there's so much.
And I'm also working, in those little pockets where I do have time, I'm able to get some work done, and I don't have to clock in or, whatever. So
you probably don't sleep much.
No, not right now. The baby, babies wake up every like 3 hours. So
my friend just had a kid, and I was like, "So you getting a lot of sleep?" He's like, "Yeah," and he's like, "I just get up every like 3 hours," and I'm like, that's not a lot of sleep.
We're doing this feeding program, and right now the last 2 days he's been sleeping really good. Like we'll feed him at 10 o'clock, and then he won't wake up till about 4. So that's a pretty good little pocket. So
yeah, it's all relative. That sounds terrible to me.
It is terrible. But then you go back to sleep after you feed him again, and then But the breaking up of the REM sleep, that's what makes the quality of the sleep is terrible.
Right.
So yeah. You just got to take naps,
Naps are good.
So somebody who maybe has a full-time job,
right.
They're interested in filmmaking, video, freelance stuff, but they don't know where to start. How do they start? Do they get on Craigslist? Do they do Facebook groups? I know from my experience, networking is key. So let's talk about that. Like how can somebody get out there and start working?
So if you want to make the transition into freelancing as a videographer, filmmaker, photographer, right? Or even any other creative. I think that there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. And I think the smartest way to do that is if you have a full-time job and are working in that industry. So you're full-time video in-house at XYZ company, right?
Yeah.
Spend all your free time getting other clients on the weekends, on the nights and everything like that, and building up this like sort of side reserve of clientele. And that could be anything. That could be, shooting events. That could be shooting weddings. That could be
for me, that was weddings.
Right. It could be whatever you want, but like build this extra stream of income, see that it's going to work, and don't just jump ship right away, but build that up. And then when you have some sort of base, then make that transition, right? So I think it's really challenging. Like you do that, or you can work to save a bunch of money. And if you're very disciplined, you can save a bunch of money at your current full-time job. Let's say you save up a year's worth of like your salary. So like you've got 40 grand cash, right? Yeah. Saved up from that. And then you go freelance and you hit the ground and you really try to get that to make it happen. But you have this reserve to keep you
that's smart.
Float.
Mm-hmm.
That's a way to do it. The other way is you kind of build that client on the side. And I think that'll tee you up to be a lot more successful if you transition into freelance versus just sending it. And and I think that there are people that have sent it and they have done it, and that's cool. But like, I think my buddy Chris Roller, who I work with a ton now, he's a really good example. And I mentored him through that process where it was like, he was like, I want to go freelance. He was full-time at Planet Fitness at the time, which is how I've worked with them. And I was like, you should like wait. And like, cause he was doing the side stuff, but I was like, build it up even a little bit more. And he waited about like a year, maybe a year and a half. And then he made that transition.
Yeah.
And when he did, it was like base and then, hey, everyone else, I'm here. I can do this. And by the way, my company that I worked at, same thing happened with my wife. They want him freelance now. So he's freelancing with Planet Fitness. He has this other clientele built up, and then new stuff arises because, all of a sudden Timberland Pro is like, oh, you're freelance now. You're not full time. Let's start working together.
Yeah.
And then
there's a mindset change. Even if you are working full time somewhere and you're doing freelance, the clients you work for, if they know that you have a full time job, they do keep that in their mind. Like, oh, he or she is not fully available because he or she has a real job. Right. But like, I remember when I was working, I had to take a real job for about 10 months because we got married and my freelance was just too rocky and we weren't able to pay our bills. And so I had to take a real job. And I remember all my clients I was working for, like, because they knew, oh, Dave's working at this place now, we won't hire him anymore. But then, like, as soon as I quit, I just was like, hey, I'm back. And they're like, oh, cool. And then boom, just like work came back. So there is value in either not telling them that you work for someone else or going, saving your money, like you said, and just quitting and then going for it,
Yeah. I think a plan's huge.
Absolutely.
When you're gonna, if you want to succeed in freelance, make a plan because your chances increase dramatically.
Yep.
There's something else. You just said something, and I had a thought.
If you don't have a target, you hit nothing every time.
Yeah. I think another thing that is important to understand in planning for a successful freelance career is to plan ahead, right? So I'm sitting here with you, and we met a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
I've made connections with a bunch of YouTubers over the last 2 years, and I'm finally now starting to do stuff with them, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to a networking party tonight, and I was literally telling my wife before on the plane ride yesterday, the connections I make at this networking party might pay off a year from now. Sometimes it's quick. Sometimes someone's like, hey, we have a project that aligns with you. But a lot of times it's a long-term game when you're getting new work, especially in freelance. So it's like, if you quit your job today and you're like, I'm ready to freelance, someone might want to hire you, but the project might not be there until 8 months later. And if you don't have the means to float that time, you don't have the means to be successful and even get the opportunity.
I think Uber is people's best friend in 2019. I mean, there's jobs like Uber, Uber Eats, Postmates, these types of things that can help kind of buffer a freelance lifestyle. I had friends who would Uber on the side if they just needed some cash, I mean, it's really easy and quick. So, but you don't have to like get a job, and go to an office. You can, on your own terms, do Uber on the side,
I think that's a fantastic point. I think that's like, if you
get out of jail card, it's like, crap, I need $300. I don't have enough money to pay my bills. I'm gonna Uber for the next 3 days,
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic way to make it work. I still think you should have a good plan though.
Absolutely. All right, so you made this truth piece that's kind of like a zombie themed thing, and it won a Shorty award, which is pretty awesome. Let's talk about that. Tell me about this project.
Yeah, so this project was for Truth. They basically came up with this idea to have zombies protest Walgreens because Walgreens still sells tobacco products in their store while CVS has vowed not to, and they don't. So CVS said, we're not doing this anymore. Truth wants to put pressure on Walgreens to do the same. And so they come up with this idea to have zombies protest outside of a Walgreens, and they sort of wanted to turn it into a PR event, right? Uh-huh. And so they told me that. They said, this is what we're doing. We need to make a video about it. We want you to make the video. And
so it wasn't just a commercial, it was actually a real thing. They actually had real costumed people in front of a real
this was an event. This was a real life event.
So this wasn't a commercial shoot.
No, it wasn't a thing that they were like, we want to make an ad. But for me, when I talked to them, I was like, oh, this seems, and this kind of goes back to what got me interested in the brand in the beginning. I was like, oh, the body bags. Like, that is how I want to make this. I want to make this documentary style, yet like I want it to look like a commercial, but I want it to be documentary style. And that's what body bags was. And I was like, can we do that? Can I take that as the creative direction? apply it to this actual protest. And they said, yeah. And it was crazy. It was freaking crazy because...
where was it? Where was it located?
They did it in January in Washington, D.C. Walgreens knew about it somehow. Like, it leaked. Like, this was a secret thing, right?
Yeah.
And it leaked, and Walgreens knew about it. So me and the guy I hired as like my second shooter, we went to the Walgreens where it was going to happen the day before to scout the location. And like, we were getting grilled. Like, we didn't go with a camera. I went in looking like I do right now, and they were like looking at us like, these are the guys that are gonna be, they knew that we were like there for something. And so there was like this immediate tension with what was gonna happen. And my idea that I had kind of come up with in terms of the way it was gonna be shot and filmed and the shots we were gonna use was to have these zombies inside of the store.
Oh, wow.
And you're not going to get inside of the store if they don't want you in there and they know what's happening. So that was a huge barrier immediately. Was like, how do we get into the store with the zombies when they know we're coming? We're here the day before and we're not dressed up or anything. And
also, they can tell you not to film in there too.
Yeah, and so they can just not let you in. Yeah. And so it's like it was a really big challenge, and so it was really, really disappointing the next day when we showed up and we couldn't get inside. Yeah. And so my idea was falling apart in front of me as we're filming this. That was a core element to this like story that we were telling, was having these zombies inside the store and having people like being like, what the hell is going on right now? Yeah. And so I talked with the marketing, my client. I talked with my client and we were like, let's film this here. We'll get everything we need outside. We'll wait 2 hours. We'll go to the Walgreens 3 blocks from here, and we'll go in there and see if it works. Yeah. And that's what we did, and it worked. And you would never know. You watch that piece, and from start to finish, it's cohesive. You wouldn't even understand that it wasn't inside of that store. Yeah. But it wasn't. And it was 3 hours later at a different store, and we're walking around, and the people that worked there were like, oh, this is fun. And they had no idea. And it was so trippy.
They weren't on edge over there at all.
They had no idea. Because they knew it was at that one store at 10 a.m. They knew exactly when it was going to happen.
It's so weird that they figured that out somehow. Somebody must have leaked it.
Yeah. So it was a cool opportunity, and it was an opportunity to problem solve in real time to make the piece come to be how it was. And then the piece, I filmed it. I went back to their office. We turned the edit around in 24 hours because it had to go to the press. It went to the press. It got, I don't even know. Let's see. So it went to the press, and their goal was to reach 1 million people. It surpassed that. I think it reached 1.5 million people in their target, in the Gen Z target. And it was used at 216 news outlets, like all over the place. It was a huge success, won a ton of awards. And like, when I was with them filming something similar recently that is not out yet, that I'm really excited about, that's apparently in the office. That's the gold standard. Like the CEO of Truth walks around and goes, we need to make something like the zombie video again. And like, for me, that's like, wow, I can't believe I would have never thought that when I started working with them as a marketer back in the day, taking like crappy pictures for their Instagram, So like, it's super cool to like,
it's awesome, man,
to be doing that kind of work. And like, I'm really proud of that.
I think that story is, a lot of freelancers can relate to that kind of on your feet thinking and like figuring out problem solving stuff. I mean, even Steven Spielberg, when he was making Jaws, like had to think on his feet and figure out, okay, the shark robot is not working. How can we make this work? And honestly, sometimes those moments in the moment, it feels stressful and obnoxious, but like the product can sometimes turn out to be better than you could ever imagine. If you did go into that Walgreens, the employees would have been really uptight. They probably would have yelled at you guys. And this other one, they were like letting it happen in a more natural kind of reaction, So like it ended up working in your favor, right? So
it did. And it was really cool. And I guess that's something that, oh man, it's so stressful when you're on a shoot and it's not going the way it's supposed to go.
How do you deal with stress? Because I used to be a DP, freelance DP in Nashville before I did YouTube. I mean, I've been in the industry for 11 years now, and I've worked with directors who are incredible, and they're very affirmative. They're very like great job, guys. Like, this is awesome. Really positive. And then I've also worked with directors who are just like stressed out the entire time. And the difference between a stressed out director and somebody who's super positive is like night and day. Like, the environment on set is just so much better when the director, the head of the group, is actually, even though we all know he's probably stressed out, like, he's at least outwardly expressing that we're doing a good job. He's being positive, or she is being positive. How do you balance that when you're on set, when you're directing?
Well, you're assuming that I am a Zen director, I think, versus like, right?
I am. But like, even if you do stress out, like, how do you figure that out? How do you navigate that?
So I do a lot of stuff, and I mentioned him earlier, Chris Roller. We work together frequently, and it's nice sometimes when you have another person on your team. And I don't always work with him, but I'm just thinking, like, when I work with him, if one of us is kind of like slipping down this stressful path, like, I think we can kind of pull the other person away, or kind of like pull them back. And that even goes beyond that. Like, I like to hire my friends if I can. So I often hire my friend Greg and Tom to help with stuff. And like, if you surround yourself with people who have positive attitudes and like have experience on set, and they understand that, this is serious, we're going to get work done, but having a good attitude and having this fun, positive environment is equally as important, then I think it just kind of like spreads to everyone.
I think attitude is almost more important than talent in some cases. Like, when you're hiring PAs, when you're hiring other people to work with you, and they are super positive and like an incredible person to be around. It's like, oh, you know what? So-and-so, he doesn't have a lot of experience, but man, he was a good hang. Like, let's hire him again. Like, I trust this guy. He's enjoyable to be around. Like, he can learn how to be better. Like, a really high skill person who's a total jerk, or somebody who has intermediate skills but is enjoyable to be around, I would much rather have that person on set, and I could teach them.
100%. I think that there's a threshold for your abilities, and if you meet that, then after that it's all about you as a person, and if I want to spend time with you. And that's honestly how I hire people on my teams. Like, if I hire you and you do not do your job, you don't take initiative,
show up late,
if you don't get this like core, if you don't meet these core requirements, then it drives me crazy. And if you do, and you are not fun to be around, that's okay. I'm not gonna hire you again. But if you meet that core requirements and you're super cool, then that's like, you're on every time. Like that. Those are my favorite people to work with, are the people that are my friends. And I think it's the same thing with clients. Like, I think my favorite clients, and the clients that are repeat clients for me, are the people that I like to hang out with. I mean, like, I'm down here in LA right now tonight, going to this party with a client from Truth. He hasn't worked for Truth for 5 years. We're friends. Like, he works at AT&T now, and I'm my brand and style of content creation doesn't meet his current needs for his brand, so I haven't worked with him. But it's not because we don't like each other. We're still buddies, and like, we're gonna go hang out. So like, I think that there's like, it's like, if you're good at what you do to like an acceptable level, and then you're a cool person, then like, that's how you get good work. And then I think that like, good vibes beget good vibes on set. So like, I like to have fun when I'm shooting. I like to have a good time. I like to get creative. I like to be stoked on like on like what we're making, and like kind of have that be the like presence. And I think if you do that, and then you hire the people that do that, then your set is just going to be good, even if it's stressful, and you have those people that keep you in check when maybe you're a little stressed, and they're like, all right, it's all right, man, we're gonna like figure this out, don't worry about it, or vice versa. And you can feed that back to them, and I think that's the key.
I just imagined you again back with your dad with the VHS, like, being stoked about the magic trick. You know? It's like, you're doing that for your job. Like, how cool is that?
Oh, I love it, man. I love it. Like, I think that's the thing, is like, if you know, going back way back to the beginning of this conversation, if you have a job or if you have a passion that can be a freelance job and you can then make it freelance and it's your job, it's the best thing in the world.
It really is.
It's amazing. Like someone could come to me and be like, Nick, I'm going to give you a salary of $500,000 and you're going to work in-house doing videos for this cloud storage company. I would be like, no. Yeah. I would straight up tell you no. Like, I don't care about that amount of money. It's not about the money for me. It's about once you hit a certain threshold. And the other thing is, like, if you're good at what you do, the ceiling is high. You can make a lot of money in this industry.
That's what I love about freelance. And for those 10 months where I was in this corporate job, I was like, wait, so if I work my butt off and I do a really good job and I'm better than everybody else, I don't make more money than them?
And you're like, I have to go somewhere else.
Yeah, I was like, basically, I'm used to, like, I was used to hanging out with so many, all my buddies were freelance. It was like, we all had this hustle mentality, because it's like, the more you hustle, the harder you work, the more money you make, the more jobs you get.
Right.
Like, but in a corporate environment, people get lazy because it's like, you know what? I could just kind of do halfway and I get paid the same amount of money.
Right.
And after a couple of years, I get a raise just automatically. Like, that's just how it works. You know?
Right.
And it's like, man, that's really depressing.
Yeah. I think there's so every day I wake up and the first 4 hours of my day, if I focus on one thing, I get so much done.
Yeah.
And there's no reason for me to, get distracted with, like, going on social media or doing something else or whatever. There's no reason, because, like, I work for myself. The consequences are directly to me.
Yeah.
Versus, like, if I work for a company, then, like, I'd probably be dinking off all day, half the time. Like,
I will say, we're sitting in an office right now for PolarPro.
Sure.
And I will say this, PolarPro functions like a small business, even though it's growing larger and larger. And the way that the leadership here functions, it feels like a startup, and it's, like, really fun and exciting.
Yeah.
And, like, we're constantly hustling here. So, like, I don't want to put down companies like this and other people who are working for companies like this who are a creative company.
Right.
There's plenty of them out there. There's other companies in our little niche that are crushing it, that are pretty awesome. So it can be done. I was working for a company of 1,000 people, and it was very corporate, and it was boring, and, like, the people who were leading me had no creativity at all. So, like, that's why I didn't like it.
Totally. Yeah, I don't mean to say that it's not something that can't be achieved in a full-time job. I think it's more about, like, do you care about what you're doing? Period. Or don't you? Yeah. And if you work full time somewhere and you care about it, then you probably are going to be really focused on what you're doing, get a lot of good work done, and not get distracted.
Like, and I was wanting to work for Pixar my whole life. I wanted to be an animator, and that's a corporate job, and that might have been fun. Working for Pixar, making Toy Story, that'd be awesome.
Or like the guy who works at HULU. I'm sure that he's not dinking around all day because he likes his job.
Yeah, exactly.
He loves what he's doing, and he could do that freelance, or he could do it full time at HULU, and that's a good fit. I think it's more about loving what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when you are freelance, there is a higher consequence to not working, though.
Exactly. You have to,
because then you don't make
disciplined.
Money.
Yeah, you have to be really disciplined. So let's transition into YouTube, because that's a whole other side of what you're doing, and it's a growing aspect of your career. Talk to me about, you say you started about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
What's your journey been like on YouTube, and then what do you see it? You said you're more of a filmmaker who also makes YouTube videos. Mm-hmm. It's not, I'm a YouTuber who also makes films.
Right. Yeah, YouTube has been an interesting experience for me. I think that when I learned about YouTube, it was
outside of 2006 or whatever.
I had no clue as to what was happening with the amount of sharing on YouTube until 2 years ago.
Are you serious?
I was completely out of the loop.
Okay.
I had no idea. No idea. I didn't learn anything on YouTube. I didn't go on there and I was like fully didn't know it existed.
So Film Riot, Indie Mogul, you weren't a part of that,
no.
6 years ago?
No. Basically, my friend who I know that you worked in the industry of magic. You may be aware of him. His name's Ian Frisch. He wrote a book called Magic's Dead. He told me, he was like, hey, because I was doing some live stream on my Instagram, like showing people how to edit. And he's like, what are you doing, dude? make a YouTube channel. He was like, you're wasting your time. And I was like, because I like to educate people. I like to mentor people. I've done that since day one, you know? Yeah. And like, he was like, why, like, what are you doing? Like, there's a place for that. It's called YouTube. And I was like, cool. And so then he was like, you know, he said that. And then I started researching it. I went down this massive rabbit hole.
I bet you went through a massive rabbit hole.
Oh, it was crazy. It was like, and it honestly it took like a year and a half really to really kind of like get my head around.
So you're telling me that of course you watched YouTube videos, the viral videos came your way all these years, right? I mean,
in a way, but not
to you, it was
so
just
much.
You're just thinking this is a place where people host videos, and sometimes they go viral.
Yeah, even like I just wasn't on it.
You were
I
active
wasn't
on
on
Vimeo
it.
though, right?
Yeah, I had stuff on Vimeo, but even in that regard, I wasn't really spending too much time on there. You know, in prior to YouTube, funny. I spent a little time on Instagram trying to follow and unfollow a bunch of people. That's such a stupid stuff. I did that a long time ago just to try to like make that work. Now I don't care really about any of that. I think now it took me like the journey of YouTube. I learned a lot in the beginning. I was all about figuring out like what thumbnail to use and titling and tagging and all, like what is my banner going to look like and all this stuff that
it's a game.
It's important, but it's not the most important piece of it.
Yeah.
And then you got through that and was like, all right, I'm going to try to make this work and sort of like force it to happen. And that didn't work. And then I started meeting a bunch of people who are in the space and sort of learning what it's like for them, getting some perspective from other people in the category, other creators. And that was super helpful. And then I feel like I almost, like at the beginning of this, I said, I almost like went full circle and was like, okay, so YouTube is not, I'm not trying to be a YouTuber. And I think the most valuable thing I can do now is help people learn how to avoid the mistakes that I made when I was learning how to freelance.
Yeah.
So I want to help people learn how to be successful freelance creators. Like that is what I want to do on YouTube. And I want to do it because it sucks when you make those mistakes and no one told me. And now there's a place where you can learn. Yeah. And I wish I could have watched a video about like how to price my work 10 years ago. I wish I could have watched a video about like the importance of using like releases and contracts and stuff. I wish I could have watched a video about how to get clients. Like I wish I could have done all of that. And now you can. Yeah. And I can share all this. Like, it took me years and like super crappy experiences to like figure all this stuff out.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And so like that's kind of where it's at now, is like I just want to help people avoid those mistakes. And like and along the way, like I do like to share like some editing stuff, some cinematography stuff. Like I think there's a lot of stuff out there. I'm a very practical person, so like one of my most viewed videos is a B-roll video, because there's a lot of B-roll videos out there, and a lot of them are fine, but they're not very useful, I don't think. And
film B-roll like a pro cinematographer.
Right.
That's your number one video.
Yeah. So that video, like I saw all these B-roll videos, they do well, and there's all this like information about it, but none of them were like a toolkit that is for me very practical.
Yeah.
For work. So like if you watch that video, I talk about the BBC 5-shot technique, and then I talk about 5 more shots. And if you do those 10 shots when you don't have a plan, you give that footage to an editor, they're going to be able to make a story out of what you filmed. It's going to be useful, versus like if you go out and just film some random stylized stuff and that's all you have and you give it an editor, they're going to be like, what the hell did you just do?
Yeah.
And so like I think that I like to share practical information.
That's awesome.
And I'm not against the other stuff at all. I just think that was a frustrating for me as I consumed content, was like, but if you're doing this professionally and you do that, you're gonna look like an idiot. You know? Awesome. So I don't know.
So for you, it's an outlet to teach, to educate, to obviously grow your brand. You become an expert. Clients will see your channel and say, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about, because he's making videos teaching people, thousands of people how to do it. So obviously he knows how to do it. If we can get him to shoot our project, then man, we're lucky, Yeah. That's one of the kind of Gary V like aspects of, you know, even if you don't want to become a quote YouTuber like Liza Koshy and David Dobrik, like you become an expert in your field, and even if it's not millions of views or millions of people, clients are going to see, oh, he's an expert.
It's validation.
Yeah.
Validation. And that is that in this day and age, it is valuable.
Yeah.
And there's also, I think that in the YouTube space, I think that I do foresee myself continuing to grow my channel, and I do see it as a means of educating, and that is the core of why I'm doing it. But it also is a place to generate revenue.
Yeah.
You can make money on there. And that is something else that I'm interested in doing, and I will do as I go.
Multiple streams of income. That's the freelance motto.
Right. And so like that's super cool. And honestly, man, like the connections that I've made and like the friends that I've made in the space is really cool. And like, it's neat to, it's an interesting and fun community to like become a part of.
Totally. I can relate to that.
So that's like that's sort of like a side thing that I didn't expect or anticipate. But like, you know, like down here, you know, I'm talking with you. I'm probably gonna end up going and hanging out with a couple other YouTubers that I'd like, not to do anything except for like have dinner or beer or something, you know? And like you kind of make these friends in that space, and like you bounce ideas off each other, and you're like complain about the shitty parts that we don't talk about in public.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've gone full in on it. I've completely said no to all freelance now, you know, 2-3 years in, full-time YouTuber. You know, this podcast is a form of that in a way. And I love it. I come from a performance background. I was a magician first, and then I became a filmmaker. So I did magic for 6 years, and then I did, you know, film and video. So I always felt like when I was behind the camera, I was missing out on a whole skill set that I honed and trained as a performer. Yeah. So now it's like, oh, this is like the perfect marriage. I love filmmaking. I love editing and shooting, but I also love performing. So like it's kind of a blend of both. I mean, it is a blend of both.
Yeah, no, totally.
So, and also the thing for me that really stood out, and I think I've been encouraging, I think what you've done is exactly what I've encouraged a lot of my friends who are freelance, who maybe don't have the love of performing that I have. It's so important to have an outlet to just do whatever the heck you want. Sure. And that's what's so great about it is like, you know what? I see a hole here. I feel like I can add some value with B-roll. I love to teach. I want to share this, and it makes me an expert on this too. You know, it's like you don't have to think about all those things when you do it, but like your B-roll video, you know, it's performed really well on your channel, and it's probably helped a lot of people. And you didn't have a client tell you how to edit it or take something out, or, you know, change this to that, you know. And like when I was doing freelance and then I started doing YouTube, it was like, you know, it was amazing. I was like, wait, I can edit this as weird and quirky as I want. And so I just went hardcore, like crazy weird with everything. Yeah. And now that's kind of become my style, and I love it because I can just do whatever the heck I want. Totally. And I was always told like, that's stupid. Why would you do that? You know, from clients.
I think that more so now than ever before with my YouTube channel, I am sort of allowing myself to do whatever I want in terms of what I'm talking about, how I'm creating my content, and like you said, doing these quirky things or really making it my own. I think when I went into it with a narrow perspective, and I've like gone 180 on that in almost every aspect. Yeah. And it's really exciting. Like I'm working on this video right now that you know, it's going to be for Epidemic Sound, which is someone that, you know, I'm using their music and stuff. But I was like, you know, again, no offense, but like every time I've seen someone's video about best music to use, it's the same thing. I don't want to do the same thing. Yeah. So like, I'm like, how can I do this? But like really push it. And so I have this script and I've been working on it, and I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know how cool it's going to be, but I think it's going to be really fun. And I also really don't care. Yeah. Like, you know, like I don't care. Like if you don't like it, then it's not for you, and that's fine. Yeah. And I think that's like a big learning thing on YouTube is like, it's not for everyone. And being able to realize that as early as you can is super important. Absolutely. It's even in freelancing. It's like your work's not for everyone. Like in the beginning, I was like, any company give me the work. Now it's like outdoor adventurous brands that like documentary style content. That's it.
Yeah.
Like if you don't fit that category or, you know, sort of that edgy nonprofit, you know, so Truth is an edgy nonprofit and it's not adventurous outdoor, but edgy nonprofit is another
documentary style.
Yeah. And it's doc style. So it's like, if you're not in those two buckets, then like, we're probably not the best match.
Yeah.
I've got a ton of stuff. I can't tell you how many commercials, little doc series videos I've made for hospitals. Hospitals have a lot of money. If you don't want to make weddings, go make hospital videos, right? They got a lot of money, and they need content all the time. They always make content. None of that's on my website, you know. And it's like,
but they pay well.
they pay well, and I think those things early on in your career.
That's something to talk about and to teach too. Is showcase what you want to be doing.
Yeah.
Right? I used to put everything on my site because I wanted to look professional, but then I was like, wait a minute, if I cut out nobody's going to sit there and watch all 30 of my videos. No. So pick your top 5 best projects and the 5 that you love, or heck, even if it's just one starting out, it's fine. Just like the one thing that you really want to be doing more of, showcase that.
And if you only have one, then go make another one for fun.
For free.
So you got 2. But yeah, I totally agree. I think paring down what you're doing and focusing it is super important, and that doesn't mean you can't do the other stuff.
All right, so so to wrap this thing up, you know, we also didn't mention this, but on your website you also have some presets, you've got some coaching videos, just another stream of income, you know. That's really, I think, the key for any freelancer who wants to be successful is not only just focusing on the one thing, but being willing to do everything that is in your wheelhouse and try to focus in on certain things. Like you said, you know, become self-aware, but I think it takes time to figure out what that is. I mean, for you, like you said, you've discovered, you know, there's only really 2 types of clients that you jive with the best. And that takes figuring out, okay, I shot a wedding, didn't like that. I did this, didn't like that, you know. What can you kind of leave for somebody who's just starting out? Just one last kind of like thing that you would want to tell them to do what you're doing now.
I think it takes a long time to start to figure out what your style is. And that road, if you can allow it to be as big and as broad as you can in the beginning. I wish I had done that more in the beginning. I wish I had made more everything. I feel like I held back a lot in the beginning in terms of publishing stuff or creating stuff because I was worried it was not perfect. And the reality is that it's never going to be perfect. So it's better to just make a bunch of stuff and do a bunch of stuff, I think, in the beginning. And then as you go, you'll learn what you like. You'll learn what is most exciting for you. You'll learn what you're the best at. And then you can slowly kind of narrow that down. And as you narrow that down, then the people that hire people that do that kind of work will start to hire you because you've become one of the best in that category, right? Trying to do everything for everyone is not a realistic approach, and I think you can apply that to like freelance career or YouTube. You know, it's like, can you niche down further? And then can you be successful in that niche? And then maybe that will bring you other stuff up here, right? So like, I think in the beginning of my YouTube channel, I was like, I'm going to make a filmmaking YouTube channel. That's way too broad. There's too many people doing that. Yeah. So now I'm going to help people learn how to be successful freelance creators. That's way more niche, right? Yeah. So, and then on top of that, like you mentioned, I have stuff on my website. I have different digital products. And like, yeah, I do have some LUTs on there and I have some Lightroom presets, right? Because everyone has those and that's fine. And people buy them and that's great. And like, I use that stuff for my own work. But I also have like a producer kit that has model release and a property release and a call sheet, and then I have a client kit that has like templates for soliciting client work. And like, I'm going to continue to make those products. Like I'm working on a contract template right now. So there's these products that are very specific to what I'm talking about that other people might not be talking about. And I think that if I keep pushing on that path, just like with my freelance career, it will grow and grow and grow, and more people will know about it, and they'll be like, oh, if you want to learn about being a successful freelance creator, you should watch Nick's channel. He also talks about other stuff too, editing, shooting, all that, and it's great. But like that's really where he's going to talk about this kind of content versus someone else who's going to talk more about gear or effects. Like Kyler Holland, he talks about effects all the time. And like that's how I think of him. And I think he has other content on his channel, but I think of Kyler as an effects channel. That's really what I think of. And so for me, it's like, you want to learn how to freelance and avoid all the mistakes? Go to the next channel. Like that's kind of what I'm thinking. And I remembered on my channel, and you were talking about YouTube and stuff. I think I do all that, the freelancing and tutorials and stuff. But it is a place where I've put out my own films, and I'm like super stoked on how that has worked out. So like I put out a surf film that I went to Iceland. I went to Iceland and made a surf film, and put it on my YouTube channel, and like it has a lot more views than some of my tutorials, and that gets me stoked because it's just it was just a passion project, right? And like it's on there. And I made one about this brewer in Maine that I love. Like he makes really good beer. He's like a legend, and so I made a short film about him. I'm gonna make a short film next weeks about this weightlifter in Oregon that I don't really know her, and I don't know how it's gonna come out, but I'm excited to make that and like put these short films out. It's great on my channel. So it is a creative outlet beyond education. And like, I think a lot of the people that subscribe like that content. And then I also just take it and I teach things with that as the example. So it kind of has a twofold, which is super cool. So yeah.
Well, Mr. Nicks Fort, AKA, what's your real name again?
Nick Gerard.
It doesn't matter. You're Nicks Fort.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate it. And for being a fan of the podcast.
Yeah, man. I love this podcast. I think that I've learned so much from all the different people that are on here, and I think everyone's different perspectives. You can kind of take a little bit here and there, and like it's super valuable. So
now
thanks for having me on here. Man. Yeah. Hopefully people learn from this, and you know,
absolutely.
If you do have questions, hit me up on Instagram and DM me. I definitely.
Yeah, everybody go follow Nick at Nicks Fort.
I do a lot of stories. I started doing stories where I will talk about something, a freelancing tip on my story.
So go follow him on Instagram.
Yeah. And I'll answer, like, people will send me a question, I'll talk about that on my story, and then I pin them below because it takes so long to make a YouTube video sometimes, and I have so much information to share. So just talking about the information is just as good. Yeah. The lighting is not.
Start a podcast.
Yeah.
And we got the Fortland flag.
Yeah, I'll have to take that with me.
You have to take it with you, but it is nice. You won up to Josh Yo on that one, I guess, because it's tire up.
Yeah, I'll take it.
All right, thanks, Nick.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
See ya. I hope you guys enjoyed my interview with Nick. It was a real pleasure getting to know him and hearing his process of how he's gone full-time as a freelance director. If you want to follow more of his work, definitely follow him on Instagram at Nicks Fort, and check out his YouTube channel as well if you want to learn more about how he does what he does. If you're not subscribed already, make sure to hit the subscribe button in your podcast player of choice and head over to the PolarPro website where you can see the entire video of this interview. It's polarprofilters.com/golden hour. Once again, I'm your host, Dave Mays, here in the PolarPro studio. We'll see you guys next week. Adios.